You ever look at the GitHub contribution graph and think to yourself, that kind of looks like one of those like roadway signs with the different pixels on it? I could probably hack that. Well, you're going to find out today how to do that on Blue Collar Coder. I'm Jack Harrington, Jahur on Twitter. So I was kind of binging Netflix with a fam, and I was looking at that, and I was like, yeah, I could like hack on that. So I downloaded a copy of my own personal GitHub profile page, and I started like playing with it. And it actually turned out to be a really cool way to explore vanilla JavaScript. So what we're going to do in this one is we're going to build out this interesting gradient, which will show you how to go and set the values of every single pixel in this graph. And then we'll go and download any image you want and put it in there as a scrolling image right through that graph. It's really cool. More fun ways to learn about vanilla JavaScript. Let's jump into the code. Okay, so we're going to start off with a GitHub profile page. In this case, I'm going to use my own. And here's one example of hacking the contribution graph. So this is showing a Pokemon pixel art. We are actually going to do that. So the first thing that we're going to do is save off a copy of this page. So I'm going to save this to the desktop. And you have to make sure to select web page complete as the format. That's really important, because that's going to give you both the HTML and then all the assets files, like the images and the JS and the CSS and all that. Next thing I'm going to do is create a new directory. I'm going to call that GitHub Fun. And then I'm going to move that HTML file and also the associated files, all the assets, into that directory. So now I've just got a single directory with jahur.htm and Jahur files. Now I'm going to bring up VS Code and bring up that jahur.htm file. That's the HTML. And from there, I'm going to use a plugin in VS Code called Live Server. And that just allows you to have open any HTML file and then say, make it live. Go live right there. And then it brings up the browser. And that, yeah, that's pretty cool, right? You're not going to see any difference between those two, which is really great. And so what we're going to do is hack on this little contribution graph down here. So the first thing to do is to get it to load some of our JavaScript. So let's go create a JavaScript file, call it index.js. And we're going to go add a script tag to the bottom of this thing, all the way at the bottom, right before the end of the body. Say script source equals index.js. And then in script, we're going to say console.log hello world. All right, let's bring up the inspector. And now we get a bunch of small errors, but we also get hello world. Yay, from index.js. So that's great. So now we've got our JS running in the context of that GitHub page. So now we have to find where this graph is in the DOM. So I'm going to go and right click on the first entry here and then say inspect. And that's going to bring up the DOM view. So we're going to be able to see, wrapping all of that graph is this div with a class called JS calendar graph, as well as a bunch of other things. And then within that is an SVG image. So it's an SVG tag. And then at the top of that is a G tag or a group tag that contains all of the columns. So I'm going to close off this first column, and you can see now that there are 53 columns running down here. Really cool, right? So every column then inside of it has 7 rectangles, and those define the different colors. Right? Those are just filled with the different colors. So the first thing to do is go get access to those. So we're going to use query selector all on document. And that's how you run a query selector to get the DOM elements that match that CSS query selector. So the first thing we're going to do is put in that .js calendar graph, saying that we want something that matches the class name of JS calendar graph, and more. More is fine. And then within that, we want, let's see, the SVG tag, which is right below that. And then within that, what do we want? Well, let's go see. All right, we want the SVG tag. And then there is a group tag within that. So we want that G. And so what we really want is we want every column. So we want the G tags within that G tag, if that makes any sense. So that's going to give us access to all these columns. And let's just console log that. And we'll go over here to the console. Aha, there you go. Now we get a node list that has all of these G tags in it, the 53 G tags. So we're to say, for example, 0 on that. Yes, I would get the first G tag. But I actually want to make an array out of this. So can I do a map? Can I take each one of those G tags and then map it to get all of the rectangles as an array? So let's see if it supports map. And no, a node list is not an array. It doesn't support all the array functions. So we need to coerce that node list into an array so we can call map on it. So the way that we do that is we just say array.from. And we give it the node list. And let's take a look. Fantastic. Okay. So now we are getting an array. It is doing a map. So I want to map then every group tag that I get from this query selector. And I want to query within that to get all of the rectangles, because each one of those rectangles has all of the fill color that we want to work with. So let's once again use our array from trick to wrap that. And we'll console log that out. All right, here we go. So now we've got basically a 53 by 7 grid. It's an array of arrays where the first order of the array is the column, and then the second order of the array is the row. So it's X first and then Y. And each one of those items in that grid is a rectangle. So let's have some fun with this. Let's go and say that the first column, first row has a fill color of red. Nice. All right. Cool. So now it's red in the browser. That's great. So let's go and grab our on and off colors. I'm going to right click on one of these that's off and get this color. And we'll call that the off color because that's basically white. And then I'll do the same thing for a very good day for me, I guess. And copy and paste that in as on. So that's going to give us our range of colors, right, between white and that really dark green. Now let's set that first style fill to be on. Nice, got a nice really dark green there. And let's just have some fun. Let's go through every single column by using column.forEach. And then within that, every column go in to get every rectangle by, again, using for each. So you're going to have nested for eaches here. And we'll go grab that fill code, and we'll set the fill to be on. And what a year that was, right? Wow, so productive. So incredibly productive. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is create a gradient all the way from off to on throughout the entire year range. So in order to do that, I'm going to use an npm.js module called color. And color allows you to grab a CSS color, like a hex color like that, and then do some permutations on it. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is create a package JSON. So in order to do that, I'm going to do yarn init-y. You could also do npm init-y. And then I'm going to add color. And that's great. So let's go and import that. Import color from color. And let's start that up. And now we're not seeing that first. I think there's maybe an error. So let's go check out, see what's looking in the console. Right, and it now says that import cannot be used outside of a module. Fair enough. So we need to have something that's going to interpret that import. So for that, I'm going to use Webpack. I'm going to use npx Webpack. I don't need to install it. But in order to get there, what I need to do is actually move the source. So I need to move index.js from where it is to /source/index, because that's where Webpack looks for it. And now I can do Webpack. And we can see that it created a dist directory. has main.js in it. And that main is a fully minified system. Kind of ugly. Let's go back over to the HTML and then change index.js to say dist main.js. And it looks like we're running again. Great, awesome. So now what do we do with color? We've got this cool thing. So it's console log, the result of calling color on the on value. And there's no change. Okay. Well, what we need to do is actually run Webpack again. And we can see that now we get a result value from that. So color is reading through that hex, and it's interpreting it, and it's giving us back some interesting things, including this color array that's got R, G, and B in it. But we don't want to have to run npx manually all the time, so the next thing that we're going to try out is watch. So I'm going to say have Webpack watch source. So anytime source changes, then it should automatically rebuild. And we're also going to put it into development mode, so that its code's a little bit easier to read. Okay, that seems pretty happy. So let's go check out that color array that's within the returned object. Nice, got those 3 values in it. So I'm going to look for another module called interpolate RGB. And what this one does is, given 2 sets of RGB values, you can then give it a value between 0 and 1, and it gives you some color that is between those start and stop endpoints. So let's go and yarn add that, and then run Webpack again. And then we'll go bring in interpolate RGB. I'm going to fix up the import here because I'm a little stickler for that. And we're going to use this interpolate creator. So it's going to give us a function back that we give it a value, and it goes and gives us back an RGB. So I'm going to take this color on color, which returns an array of 3 items, and put that in there for the first value and the second value, and then change the on to off. So now it gives us a range between off and on. And then we'll drop that in there for the fill style. We'll say we want halfway. So somewhere between those two. So it doesn't work. So why is that? Well, let's go find out what interpolate is giving us. Let's do console log on interpolator. And that's giving us back an array of 3 values. Okay, cool. So we need to convert that back into a hex. So we call color on that. That's great. Okay, it understands that. Now we call .hex on that color. What do we get? All right, we get a hex value. Awesome. Okay. So we want to drag that and put that into that fill. Great. Okay. Now we've got essentially like a half green, half white value there. Nice. So to do our gradient, I am going to need some numbers on this. So we're going to go and look for that second value that comes in the for each. And we're going to have that be x for the columns, and then y for the rows. And I can just change out this 0.5 for x plus y over 60, because 53 plus 7 is 60, so 0 to 60. That looks pretty. Wow, that's really nice. Okay, but this is just kind of showing you what you can do, giving a nice toolkit. But let's do something really fun with this. Let's go and take this example and put it in its own directory. We'll call that gradient. Move everything except for the gradient folder into that gradient folder. So that's going to be one project. We'll call that gradient. And now we'll recursively copy gradient into a new folder called image. That's basically an exact clone of what we did before. So now I've got these 2 directories, because in this new directory called image, we're going to display an image in that GitHub graph. All right, so let's stop our live server on the original one, and then we'll start it on this new image project. And it looks good, looks fine. Let's go change around a value, just make sure everything's cool. Run that Webpack. And it looks good. Okay. So it's always good to make sure that you're working with the right code. So let's go find ourselves an image. I like this placedog.net. It's got cute dogs on it. So I'm going to go grab this little guy and save his image to the desktop. And then using preview, I'm going to go and change the size of this guy to 53 wide. That's going to pixelate him a little bit. And now this pixelated image is what we're going to use to drive that graph. So let's go into the image directory and move that puppy in there. And now we can get rid of a lot of stuff, actually. We don't need a lot of that. All we need to do is have that grid called columns and a way to iterate through it. So we'll just retain that. And now we need to bring in that image. So we'll say we want a new image. And the source of that image is /image/puppy.jpg. And the reason it's /image is because the server is running this at the top level of the directory. And so this is in /image, and that's where it is. So image puppy.jpg. And now we need to say, well, when it's loaded, call this function. So we create an onload function. I'll just comment that out for the time being. Don't need that for the moment. And now let's just make sure that the image loads properly. We'll go and ask it for its width. So if this works, it should be 53, right? We just put that in there. So let's go back over in the browser. Great, 53. So good. We were loading our image. Looks good. So now in order to get all the access to the pixel data, we need to create a canvas. So we're going to use document.createElement to dynamically create a canvas element. And then within that, we're going to go get the 2D painting context. We're going to ask the canvas for its context. Specify that it should be 2D. And then within that canvas, we're going to draw that image. So you're not going to see anything. This is all off screen. I'm going to draw the image at 0, 0, meaning the upper left-hand corner. And so now we'll bring back the code that looks through every cell. And we have to figure out a way to set these fill styles. So we're going to be setting this value. So we need to go get the pixel data. So I need to ask the context, get image data, and that takes a starting X, starting Y, and then a width and a height. So for the X and Y, I'm going to specify X and Y. And then I only want a single pixel, so I'm going to specify 1 by 1. So for the moment, let's just console log out what that pixel looks like. All right, you get a bunch of these image data structures. So what does that look like? Well, an image data structure has a data in it. It's got 4 values, R, G, B, and A for alpha. So if we look at just the data, then we can just see that we get these arrays. And now let's use a string template to format that into a CSS RGB value by doing a join on the pixel data. Okay, that's starting to look good. In fact, I'll just add RGBA in there. It's all 255, but whatever, it's fine. And now let's go grab that string template, put that in there for the fill style. And we get pretty much all white. Okay, well that's the top of the image. So let's go and offset that a little bit by just adding a number onto the Y value. So we'll just say we want to start the 10th row on. Hit refresh. Okay, there we go. We're starting to see kind of the eyebrows, I guess, of the puppy, just top of the ears or whatever. So let's go and have some fun. Let's go and shift this thing down line by line on a set interval. So we'll start off with an offset. We'll say that the offset is 0. And we'll create a set interval at a speed of 80. I'll drop that in there. And we'll change out that 10 for the offset. And then after every iteration, we then add one to the offset. But we got to bound it, right? Because otherwise it's going to fall off the edge there. So we're going to say if offset plus 7, which is the number of rows, is greater than the image height, then we'll roll back to the beginning again. So offset equals 0. And there we go. Now we've got our scrolling puppy. Oh, that is so cute. And you can do this with any image you want. So I've created a bunch of examples based on this whole system over here under GitHub Graph Hacking. That's in the description, and you can check those out for yourself. There's an audio example that uses the microphone to go get the waveforms and then displays the waveforms in the GitHub Graph. It's really cool. There's the image example that we just did. There's messages, which draws scrolling messages on your GitHub Graph. There's raindrops that is like a raindrop simulator, really cool. And then the spectrum is basically what we just did with the gradient fill. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. There is so much more to learn in that examples repo. The audio one in particular is really fun using the audio context API. It's really interesting. Jump into the code and try it out. Find out for yourself. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to put those down in the comments section down below. If you really like the video, hit that like button. Let everyone know. If you really, really, really like the video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, click on the bell, and you'll be notified anytime a new one of these videos comes out. And in the meantime, be happy, be healthy, and be safe.